All right, guys, I am the Kodiak, and I don't know if you've heard this year, but the NFC East is garbage. The team that a lot of people thought would be the best this year, and the team that actually won the division last year, despite having an 8-8 record, which is pretty subpar for a division winner, is the Philadelphia Eagles. And they've gone from Super Bowl to 3-5-1, and we're going to go into how they accomplished that. But first, I want to look at what they've done this year. So week one, they played a Washington team that picked second overall this year, and Carson Wentz got sacked like 9 times. Played the Rams, got their shit stomped. Drew had a tie against the Bengals, which that's pretty pathetic considering the Bengals went 2-14 last year, and Burrow was still in his third career game. Beat the 49ers on Sunday Night Football, so they actually played pretty well against San Fran. Lost to a much superior Pittsburgh team, lost to a much superior Baltimore team. Thank God they beat the Giants, but for a second I thought the Giants were going to win that game. And then against the Cowboys, they played well against a Ben DiNucci-led Cowboys squad. And then last week they lost against the Giants too. The sad thing is that whoever wins the NFC East this year very well could have a 5-11 or 6-10 record, which means they would play a very, very, very good team from the NFC West or the NFC South, depending on whichever teams don't win the division. So whether they play the Cardinals, the Rams, the Seahawks, the Buccaneers, the Saints, whoever wins the NFC East is going to get their shit clapped. Going back to the start of last year, their best offensive player by far, and this is not even close, has been Miles Sanders, and they are so uncommitted to using him to the point where they signed Jordan Howard off the practice squad this past week. The pretty amazing thing that losing to the Giants last Sunday proved is that the Eagles were rushing for 6.8 yards a carry and decided to fucking throw the ball 37 times. They could have run on that terrible Giants team all day and mixed that with a few deep throws here and there, but no, Doug Peterson, who I think is very clearly showing that he is not a very good head coach, decided to have Wentz throw the ball 10 to 15 yards all day, which, go ahead. And the Eagles' offense is trash whenever they don't use Miles Sanders or Carson Wentz is not forced to bail out Doug Peterson's awful play calling. So after watching a replay of the Giants-Eagles game this past week, I could say that, asking Carson to play it safe rather than play more towards like what Jameis Winston did last year, which is what he's been doing this year. He's been more of a fuck it and chuck it quarterback this year. I think I'd much rather have Carson, Jameis Winston Wentz rather than Carson Alex Smith Wentz, because at least Carson Jameis Winston Wentz is exciting. And this might be one of the most pathetic stats I've heard. So Carson Wentz leads the league in interceptions with 12. He also leads the league in dropped interceptions with 7. So if a few more things went his way this year, we'd be looking at Nathan Peterman numbers for Carson Wentz. And I think the Eagles defense should be renamed to Riley Reed because it looked like they got paid for Wayne Gallman and Daniel Jones to just run a train on them all day. No matter who you are, if you can say that you made Daniel Jones look like Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray, I think it's pretty fair to say you played a pathetic game. And tomorrow they have Cleveland, so God only knows what Chubb and Hunt are going to do. Bottom line is you should never lose to the Giants without Saquon Barkley. As far as the defense as a whole, their whole scheme is built around trying to get the opposing quarterback to make a mistake. And since inaccurate quarterbacks are becoming fewer and fewer, you see Washington in their same division just went from Dwayne Haskins to Alex Smith. So it's not an upgrade at all. If anything, it's a downgrade. But Alex Smith is way more accurate than Dwayne Haskins. The only bright spot for the Eagles' defense this year, as far as outside of the D-line, has been Darius Slay. We all know Darius Slay is a good player, but at best, he looks like he's an above average to average corner in the NFL, at least in the Eagles' defense, which is not good considering they've never ever invested heavily into corners, inside linebackers, and they've just relied on safeties more than anything when they had Rodney McLeod and Malcolm Jenkins to basically bail them out. And that worked for 1 year. 1 year where they played absolute trash cans of quarterbacks, and we'll get to that 1 year because it ended up winning them a ring. And I guess the primary issue for the Eagles is that they pay 3 defensive linemen upwards of $50 million a year, and they pay Darius Slay more than basically any corner in the NFL. And they're all good players, but they're nearing the end of their prime. You think of Cox and you think of Brandon Graham. It's getting to the point where I don't think they can be as effective as they once were. And those four guys I just talked about, the three D linemen and Darius Slay, they have to be elite or their defense will be picked apart. When they played the Giants on Sunday, they allowed back-to-back opening drive touchdowns, which that's not something you want to be doing against a team that averages like 18 points a game. And they're just not helping each other out. So on the first drive of the game, they sacked Daniel Jones for a 6-yard loss, so it made it 2nd and 16. Very next play, Darius Slayton catches an 18-yard pass from Daniel Jones, and yeah, new set of downs. So they are not playing complimentary football right now. So aside from Sanders, Goddard, Fulgham, and Reagor, keep in mind they picked up Fulgham off the street from Detroit this year. This team really doesn't have a lot of young talent either. Their O-line is below average. A lot of teams have suffered from injuries, yet they're still playing better than the Eagles are down right there in the trenches. And the Eagles are a team, like I made the Indianapolis video a week ago, who has invested heavily, heavily, heavily into the trenches ever since Howie Roseman took over as the general manager. And Brandon Brooks' loss has been the most impactful. Like, that completely sucks to lose your Pro Bowl, All-Pro guard in the offseason before you even started any OTAs or any training camp or anything. Losing Dillard didn't hurt that much because, 40-year-old Jason Peters can do just as good a job as he does. And then Lane Johnson's been banged up all year, which is a huge blow. Lane Johnson, probably top 1, top 2 right tackles in the game. And the starting guards right now were late picks or undrafted players for a reason. And Jason Kelce has to do too much right now. It results in blown assignments and erratic snaps. And yeah, he's not getting any younger, and they have a significant amount invested into this offensive line, which is playing below average. So coming into this year, the only moves of note that the Eagles made in the offseason was trading for Darius Slay. Can't argue with that. He's been probably one of their best players on defense. Then drafting Jalen Reagor in the first round. I can't blame Reagor for being hurt and I can't blame the Eagles for making that pick at that time. But they did pass on Justin Jefferson, who's averaging above 18 yards a catch right now. They had to invest in a wide receiver because they tried to take J.J. Arcega-Whiteside in the second round last year. Did not do jack shit even when he was the Eagles wide receiver 1. And I think an Eagles fan I know ended up telling me last year when I lived in Hawaii that J.J. Arcega-Whiteside had one of the worst rookie seasons from an Eagles, like top 3 round pick ever, which I don't know if that's true or not, but for the sake of cherry picking our argument, I'm going to believe him. So we go back to the year they won the Super Bowl, 2017, and just looking at this roster, it is just so deep from top to bottom. They had literal no-names that they picked up off the street contributing a big play here and there, and that is probably one of the biggest reasons why they were able to win the Super Bowl. It's just because they had key contributor after key contributor after key contributor. I can literally not go down their roster, like their starting lineup in 2017, and name a guy who they can win the Super Bowl without. So in 2017, they played some pretty terrible opponents, but they were just getting blowout win after blowout win after blowout win after blowout win. And a lot of people, including myself, questioned, could they beat the Falcons? Could they beat the Vikings? Could they even beat the Patriots? And I think that was one of the most incredible playoff runs we've ever seen from one team. And I know that Super Bowl meant a hell of a lot to Philadelphia. Because, when 60 years of agony finally ends and people are just in the street rioting, climbing up all those light poles, it meant a lot to them. And funny story, I was actually able to be in Las Vegas a week after the Eagles won the Super Bowl. And I saw the Golden Knights play the Flyers, and I don't think I've ever been around a ruder, more obnoxious fan base. I mean, I'm not even a Golden Knights fan, and I wanted the Golden Knights to beat the shit out of them. But I do like the Eagles, and I respect the fact that their fan base is very, very hardcore. They even booed Santa Claus. And this year against the Rams, when Carson Wentz threw an interception, even though there's no fans in any stadiums right now, they even played a booing soundtrack to try to resemble the behavior of Philly fans as a whole. Back to that playoff run, I'm starting to think that Doug Peterson was just carried by Dan Quinn, Case Keenum, and Matt Patricia, and Frank Reich and Nick Foles to a Super Bowl ring. The Falcons, still hungry from that Super Bowl loss the year before, get into the red zone, and they call the exact same play 4 straight times. I don't even know why you do that. And the crazy thing is, the literal exact same thing happened week 1 of 2018. I'm sure you all remember that Falcons-Eagles kickoff game. And the Falcons ran the exact same play they ran in January 4 straight times in the red zone. Next week, they beat the shit out of Minnesota, who played like a team that got lucky on a bailout Hail Mary. And then Nick Foles goes toe-to-toe with Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. That was an incredible game. The Philly special was probably the best trick play I have ever been alive for and maybe ever will be alive for. Frank Reich and Nick Foles just completely dismantled Matt Patricia's game plan. Even though it looked like the Patriots didn't come into that game with a game plan on defense to begin with, they made Nick Foles look like Peyton Manning. And their defense played like Swiss cheese and didn't play a great game as a whole because they allowed Tom Brady to throw for 506 yards and put up 33 points. But they did come up with that very timely turnover that Brandon Graham had recovered by Derek Barnett. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that's all that was needed. And then everybody in Philly is just going fucking ballistic. So the next year they signed Lodi Nada, but they also lose some guys in free agency. They lost Vinny Curry, Patrick Robinson. They also didn't have Carson Wentz for a little bit to open up the year. And the Eagles ended up making history this year, losing 48-7 to New Orleans, which I believe set a record for largest loss by a defending champion in NFL history, which is 41 points. After they lost that game to the Cowboys in overtime, they played the Rams and actually ended up beating them in another upset victory. Played the Texans, and they were just bailed out by Bill O'Brien's incompetence, even though Deshaun tried his hardest to win that game. And then they beat the Redskins 24-0. 2018 playoffs, so they beat the Bears on the double doink. Then the next week, they go up 14-0 on the Saints, and then Nick Foles throws a pick that goes right through the Eagles wide receiver's hands. I can't remember if it was Aguilar or Jeffrey. And yeah, Saints pick it and go on to lose against the Rams that next week, where they really shouldn't have. Then 2019, they win the NFC East going 9-7. And the only good thing about that year is the emergence of Miles Sanders in the second half of the season. I don't know if you guys have watched All or Nothing, but if you haven't, you're definitely missing out. It's basically season-long Hard Knocks, but the thing that amazed me was how badly or how amazingly they were carried by Miles Sanders in the second half of the year. And if they weren't carried by Miles Sanders, people were saying that whoever won the NFC East last year was likely going to be a terrible team, which is true. But could you imagine your reaction if I told you that whoever was going to win the NFC East this year was miles worse than that 2019 Eagles team who ended up winning the division and getting first rounded by the Seahawks off that Clowney Wentz helmet to helmet? Jury's still out on Jalen Reagor. Jury's still out on, well, I'm not even going to defend the Hurts pick. That was horrible at the time. It's horrible now. But the jury's still out on whether or not Barnett was a good pick. I think if you ask the majority of Eagles fans, they'd say that fumble recovery in the Super Bowl alone was worth the pick. But ever since that Barnett pick, I can't think of, other than 2 picks, a pick where they actually ended up hitting on. And those 2 picks were Dallas Goedert in 2018 and Miles Sanders in 2019. I guess jury's still out on, like I said, Reagor, and jury's still out on Dillard. It has just become very clear that Carson Wentz is not playing at the level we saw in 2017, and Doug Peterson got carried to a Super Bowl by Nick Foles, Matt Patricia, and Frank Reich, who is now the head coach of the Colts, who is a very good head coach. I don't know who's going to win the NFC East right now. Like I said, I think it's between the Eagles and Washington. But you can bet your ass whoever the 5 seed is going to go into the NFC East Stadium wildcard weekend and just beat the everlasting fucking shit out of them. Alright guys, that's going to do it for the video. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're not already, and comment down below, what do you think the Eagles can do to fix everything? Do you think they should fire everyone, move on from Wentz, even though he has a huge dead cap hit? Let me know what you think. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're not already. Follow me on Twitter, link is in the description down below. Anyways, guys, have a good day, and peace out.